Hi, my name is Alec. I'm a currency broker and markets professional, and in today's video I'm going to be talking you through US dollars to British pound sterling international transfers. I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks that I've picked up over the course of my career working with clients and different banking institutions, helping you hopefully avoid some of the common pitfalls that can set you back in terms of time and of course money. So stick around and we'll go through the details. First thing I wanted to talk about is trade timing. Obviously very crucial when it comes to large transfers. If you're shifting the sort of tens to 100,000 figures, you want to be watching the market and trying to push the button at the best possible time, all within the bounds, of course, of proper risk management and not trying to sort of speculate in the market and end up perhaps getting your fingers burnt. But a few key takeaways I wanted to mention just for you to consider when timing your transaction. Something really important that you need to bear in mind when trying to time your trade effectively is the US dollar's role as the world's global reserve currency. Why that's important to you is because it's seen as a bit of a barometer for risk appetite amongst investors and institutions. For example, in very uncertain times like the COVID-19 outbreak or the Ukraine conflict, investors will look to park their capital in that safe haven asset. So they sell assets they have and they go and buy dollars or dollar-like assets like US treasuries, i.e. government debt, because it's seen as a place of safety. So what that does through simple forces of demand and supply, you've got more people effectively in the demand bracket buying US dollars. That bids up the price for dollars. So if you're holding dollars, which you would be in a US dollar pound transfer, you could, all else being equal, expect your situation to improve as the dollar rises. It's got more buying power, which means you'll be able to buy more pound sterling and see your currency exchange increase. Another thing you need to be aware of is central banks. In the US, you have the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank over there. It's a very powerful institution and its policies have ripple effects through the whole of the global economy. It's important to bear in mind that when they increase their interest rates, you're likely to see the dollar rise because investors are getting paid a higher interest rate for parking their money in US treasuries. And because US treasuries are seen as such a safe asset, investors are quite happy to put their money in a US treasury at a higher yield because to them it's seen as a risk-free return. Conversely, of course, you've got the Bank of England in the UK. At the time of recording this video, we've seen inflation surge and the Bank of England has had to increase their interest rates more aggressively than otherwise expected. So you have actually seen the pound appreciate as well. So it's not just a case of whatever the US side does, their currency appreciates or depreciates. There is a flip side to that about what the Bank of England doing as well. And it's worth mentioning that both those central banks are contending with the issues of inflation, and how they respond by trying to fight that inflation by increasing their interest rates is crucial to the relative strength of the currency pair. So you need to be watching those announcements carefully, seeing what those central banks are doing and how it's affecting that currency pair. Okay, so hopefully you found that segment on market timing useful. It's not a conclusive list, but at least it gives you an idea as to what drives the dollar-pound rates. The next thing to consider, of course, is how you're actually going to go about doing that transfer. And there are three main ways you can go about processing an international currency exchange. The first one being your bank. Quick, generally convenient. You can go into branch, you can go onto your online banking, set up the details of the UK account you want to pay, press a few buttons, and your money should be on the way. However, they are notoriously expensive, so I would suggest with any large transfer, unless you have some sort of special arrangement with your bank, which 99.9% people don't, I would stay clear of the bank for any large currency transfers. So then you want to be considering the two other sub-brackets, which is first of all an online platform. Very easy, convenient to use, and they generally have very transparent fee structures, so you're going to be finding out if there's any fixed fees involved. But also, most importantly, are there any percentage fees baked within the rate? That's what the bank does. They include a fee percentage normally within the exchange rate, and the online platform is going to be totally transparent with what that percentage fee is. So very important when it comes to a large transfer, pinning down your costings. The third option is a currency broker. They operate in a similar fashion to an online platform, being an alternative to a typical high street bank. One thing to consider though is they generally aren't as transparent with their fees. They operate similar to a bank in that they build in a percentage fee within their rate of exchange. So when you're contacting these companies, make sure you're sure to fix a percentage fee, understand the costings fully, and if they're not forthcoming with that information, that should be a red flag to you to probably avoid that company, because they're trying to hide their costings from you. The plus side of using a currency broker is they generally operate on a much more sort of tailored service level. You're generally going to get a one-to-one account manager, which is very helpful when it comes to a large transfer, because you're going to get some of that support which we spoke about when it comes to monitoring the markets, seeing what's driving the currency pair. You're going to get somebody updating you with those sort of fluctuations, so that can be quite helpful. So if you can, find a currency broker that's going to pin down a fixed fee so you know what you're dealing with, you're not having to have battles over costings, and then you can just get on trying to do your transfer at the best possible time. So in this part of the video, I'm going to talk about some of the common pitfalls that you tend to come up against when moving dollars into pounds. These are things that I've picked up on in my experience helping many people move money across the Atlantic. And the first one I want to discuss is something called third-party funds. What that means, if you're not familiar with the term, is say you're selling a property, or maybe you're liquidating some investments, and that professional, whether it be a lawyer or an investment advisor, says, okay, I've got these proceeds to send to you, where do you want them sending? You've got two options there. You can either say, please send it to my personal checking account that you've got in the States, maybe with Bank of America or somebody similar like that, or you can say, please send it to the currency company I'm working with. And I would strongly recommend to use that latter option. The reason being, it's going to first of all skip a whole step. You're not going to have the confusion of it going into another bank account, which you then got to access and then action another payment to the currency broker. And second of all, a lot of American banks can be quite tricky dealing with, particularly if you're not in the country. They may often want you to be in branch. They could apply sort of punitive daily transfer limits for you moving your money if you're not there. And of course, if you're doing a large transfer, if it's property or investment related, it's likely going to be a substantial sum, which moving a small amount every day is going to be taking you weeks. So I would advise directly from the professional's account to your currency company account, so that way you can get cracking and start converting those funds when you're ready. That leads me nicely on to another point, which is about banking checks. What can sometimes happen is if you're not in the country, or depending on your bank's own security procedures, maybe they'll say to you, we can't action an electronic transfer, we're going to have to send you a check in the post, which on the face of it doesn't sound too bad. However, when that check arrives with you in the UK and you try and deposit that into your personal current account that you have with a high street bank, that check is going to take weeks to clear. It's going to have a punitive fee for sort of clearing that check, as well as the bank applying that punitive rate of exchange that they offer you by the time it clears. So it's going to be expensive. You want to avoid that. If it does come up, and I have had clients in this position where they have this check, they don't know what to do with it, what I'd suggest is, first of all, approach your high street bank, ask them to open a US dollar account for you. They should be able to do that, or find a bank that will do. What you can then do is deposit that check into the account, into your dollar account, wait for it to clear. It's going to take a couple of weeks at least. But once it has cleared, you will have effectively electronic dollars, electronic money, to then transfer to the currency company of your choosing. The benefit of that is, of course, you can move it to a company that's going to give you a better rate of exchange. But also, you're not beholden to the point at which that check clears. The bank is going to convert the funds automatically. If you were in a place where you wanted to say, okay, I'm going to wait and see what the market does before converting my dollars, because you've got cleared dollars, there's no automatic conversion that's taken place. You can then move them to a broker ready to be converted at the time of your choosing. It's not being dictated to you by the bank in question. Another common pitfall you want to avoid is if you hold a bank account with a smaller community bank versus a large institutional bank like Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase, is just be careful. A lot of the time these smaller community banks aren't very familiar with processing international transfers. The reason why that's important is what will often happen is the currency company that you're using will hold a dollar safeguarded account in the UK. So when you're trying to get your dollars over to them, you'll need to process what's known as an international wire transfer, i.e. an international dollar transfer from the US, from that community bank's account to the safeguarded account with the currency company. What you'll often find happen is that community bank won't be familiar with that process, and they'll try and process a domestic transfer via sort of a simple domestic wire or something called an ECH transfer, but it simply doesn't work. They need to process the transfer with the relevant IBAN and SWIFT code to be able to get those funds across the Atlantic to the UK. So what I do is, when you're doing that process, is convey to the bank the international nature of the transfer, mention the term international wire transfer. That should get the process moving. But if it doesn't, what I suggest anyway is a good port of call is speak to your currency company. This is where somebody like a currency broker will be invaluable, because they should have the expertise to supply the relevant banking information that that institution needs to be able to get the funds over, because there is a chance that they will have to use an intermediary to facilitate that transfer. So the community bank, smaller bank, talks to a larger bank like Bank of America. They use that bank to assist the international transfer over to the currency broker. So certainly speak to a currency broker, get an experienced one that knows how this works, because it can present issues trying to get money out of the US over to a broker's account in the UK ready for conversion. Another thing I want to talk about is the use of trusts. It's much more common in the US for trusts to be used as a vehicle to consolidate a client's wealth through their property, their investments and their cash savings into this legal entity. In the UK, it's far less common. It's not a problem necessarily to work with a client with that sort of legal setup. The main thing to bear in mind, though, is a lot of the time clients won't necessarily think to inform a currency company that that is the case. So when the money in dollars arrives with the currency broker or currency platform, it will show as coming from a trust. That currency company doesn't know who that trust is. They then have to sort of push back to the client and look to sort of understand the nature of that trust, find out the legal setup, understand who the trustees are, the beneficiaries, all to sort of comply with UK rules around the regulations of dealing with trusts. So it's just something to bear in mind. Be forthright with the fact that it's coming from a trust. That way that currency company can liaise with you correctly, understand the paperwork they need to receive, get that all done and dusted, so that when the funds arrive, they are ready to trade. Because if it's got a compliance hold on it, it's more than likely that currency company won't be allowed to trade those funds until they're signed off. And the most frustrating thing would be is if the market is, say, advantageous and you want to capitalize on that, but you're not allowed to trade the funds because they haven't been cleared by compliance, you could be missing out on a movement in your favor. So like with most things, it's really important to get ahead with the paperwork, be as transparent as possible with the currency company. That in itself requires building a good relationship with them and a relationship of trust. Once you've done that, tell them everything you can about your financial situation within reason, just that they're fully aware of the circumstances, so there's no hold-ups when it comes to actually pushing the button. Another thing I wanted to touch on is the security side of things. When you're looking around at different providers, just ensure that you're using a currency company that operates regulated and authorized FCA safeguarded accounts. That's just going to afford you a level of security by which, if that company were to cease to trade, those funds are fully protected up to the full amount. So it functions a bit like a solicitor's holding account. Your money is protected when it's lodged in that account, and it's not capped by any sort of government scheme of £85,000 or what have you. So just make sure they're regulated and authorized FCA safeguarded accounts. Another important thing I wanted to speak about is the culture of teaser rates within the currency exchange industry. It's not all providers, of course, but just to bear in mind that as somebody that's been on the inside of this industry, it does happen where a currency company, if you're ringing around, will provide you with a really, really good rate of exchange. They're not going to tell you their percentage fee. They're going to build it into what they would probably term as sort of a trading price, a trading rate. And then what may happen is you'll enthusiastically sign up because the rate seems really competitive, nice and close to market. You'll register, you'll send your money over to them, and then when the money actually arrives and they go to actually trade it for you and sort of rerun that quote live to the market, you'll then see that that trading rate that they're offering you is actually far further away from the market than what was originally quoted to you. It is unfortunately a practice within this industry, so much so as an industry insider I chose to blow the whistle with the FCA about this practice, because if you can think of a transfer that's in the hundreds of thousands, a property transaction, someone's life savings, and you're quoting them a teaser rate that's only 0.5% away from market, and then when the money arrives the broker jacks up the fee to 3, 4, 5, even 6%, you can see that that fee is dramatically increasing, and it is something that happens in the industry. So it's something I'm passionate about raising awareness on. So please just be careful, don't fall for any teaser rates. Make sure you lock down a percentage fee from market so that they can't hide any fees from you and then perhaps later increase them when your money actually arrives. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is actually the step-by-step process, the sort of mechanics of how you go about processing a dollar to sterling transfer. First step is choose the right provider for you, hopefully the information in this video, and I'll include a link to the full blog I've written on the subject of dollar to sterling payments, will have given you sufficient knowledge to decide who is best for you and which provider suits your needs most. Once you've decided, go ahead, get registered with them, provide all the anti-money laundering details, personal identity documents and other information needed to get yourself all set up. Once you are, request the details of the dollar safeguarded account that they're holding on your behalf, action a transfer over to them in dollars, and then when the funds arrive, of course, you can then look at converting them into sterling at the time of your choosing. Depending on the provider, you'll either be able to lock in an exchange before you've got any money there, or potentially if it's a large transfer, that company may require some or all of your money to be on the account before they'll actually secure you a rate of exchange. Just bear that in mind. But all that aside, once you've converted funds, your trade has been settled, you'll then have to provide the details of your sterling account, make sure you've got the correct information, of course, and then the currency company on your behalf will action that sterling to sterling payment out. And if it's a CHAPS payment, which it likely will be if it's a larger one, it'll be there within a few hours, possibly next day. And if it's a smaller payment, they'll likely use the faster payment system where it should be there near enough instantaneously. Well, that just about wraps up the video. I hope you found it useful. Please consider liking and subscribing as it really helps expand the reach of the channel. If you want further content on this subject, in the description below will be a link to the blog that I've written on dollars into pounds, so you can have a bit more information there. If there's one key takeaway from this video, please make sure you're getting transparent fees, particularly built in within the rate of exchange. If you are looking for a company to help you with your currency transfer needs, please consider reaching out to us. My name's Alec, I'm the founder of a company called TadFi. We are a large currency transfer specialising company based in the UK. We offer all our clients a full, transparent fee structure breakdown, giving you those all-important percentage figures, as well as combining that currency broker service with the convenience of an online platform. So we have sort of a dual service offering, online platform and a telephone dealing line. So that way you really are getting the best of both worlds, combined with a transparent fee structure so you know exactly what you're paying for the service. If that sounds like something you may be interested in, there'll be a link in the description as well to our inquiry form. Pop in a few basic details like the amounts you're looking at and your contact details, and then we'll reach out to you with the full fee breakdown to see if the service would be of interest to you. Thanks very much, and see you in the next one.